The galactic outcasts. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, where countless stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet, the Zirconians found themselves alone. Not in the physical sense, for the galaxy teemed with life, but in a way that cut deeper than mere isolation. They were outcasts, shunned by a universe that seemed to have no place for them. The Zirconians were silicon-based life forms, evolved on a world that would be considered hellish by most carbon-based species. Their homeworld, Zircon Prime, orbited a red dwarf star, its surface a landscape of crystalline structures and rivers of molten silicon. To the Zirconians, it was paradise. To the rest of the galaxy, it was an aberration. Galactic society, dominated by carbon-based life forms, viewed the Zirconians with a mixture of fascination and revulsion. The concept of silicon-based life had long been theorized, but never before encountered. When the Zirconians made first contact with the galactic community, it sent shockwaves through scientific circles and sparked heated debates about the very nature of life itself. But scientific curiosity quickly gave way to practical concerns. The Zirconians couldn't breathe the same air, eat the same food, or even exist in the same temperature ranges as most other species. This made diplomatic relations challenging at best and impossible at worst. Trade agreements faltered before they could begin, cultural exchanges were deemed too risky, and slowly but surely, the galaxy began to turn its back on the silicon outsiders. Zal, then, a prominent Zirconian diplomat, stood before the Galactic Council, his crystalline form shimmering under the harsh lights of the chamber. He had come, once again, to plead for understanding and cooperation. Esteemed members of the Council, Zalven's voice resonated through the translator, a tinny approximation of the melodic tones produced by his vibrating crystal structure. We Zirconians come before you not as invaders or competitors, but as fellow sentients seeking our place in this vast galaxy we all call home. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some averted their eyes, unable to look directly at the alien being before them. Others wore expressions of thinly veiled disgust or fear. While it's true that our biology differs from yours, Zal then continued undeterred, our hearts and minds are not so different. We too seek knowledge, companionship, and the betterment of all. A Thoraxian counselor, his insectoid mandibles clicking in agitation, interrupted. And how do you propose we accommodate your kind, Zirconian? Our worlds would be toxic to you, just as yours would be to us. The resources required to establish even basic diplomatic facilities are prohibitive. Zalven's crystalline surface rippled, a sign of emotional turmoil. We ask only for a chance. We have developed technologies that allow us to exist in your environments for extended periods. We seek not to burden you, but to contribute. Our unique perspective could lead to advancements that benefit all. The chamber erupted in murmurs and heated discussions. The Galactic Council had heard similar pleas before, and each time, the practical challenges seemed insurmountable. As the debate raged on, Zal then stood silently, a lonely figure in a sea of carbon-based life forms. Hours later, Zal then found himself back on his ship, staring out at the glittering expanse of space. The Council's decision had been predictable. Another polite refusal, another door closed. The Zirconians would remain on the fringes of galactic society, tolerated but never truly accepted. As Zal then prepared to return to Zircon Prime with the bad news, an alert chimed on his console. A new species had achieved faster-than-light travel and was making contact with the galactic community. The Zirconian diplomat barely glanced at the report. What difference would one more carbon-based species make? Little did Zal then know that this new species, a race of bipedal primates from a small blue world they called Earth, would change everything. The humans burst onto the galactic scene with an enthusiasm that bordered on recklessness. Where other species saw insurmountable differences, humans saw fascinating challenges. Where others recoiled from the alien, humans reached out in curiosity. It was a human ship, the UES Explorer, that first made contact with a Zirconian vessel in deep space. Captain Sarah Chen, her eyes wide with wonder, stared at the crystalline beings on her view screen. "I'll be damned," she whispered, a grin spreading across her face. "Silicon-based life. It's real." The Zirconian captain, Crixtol, was equally astonished. Never before had a carbon-based life form reacted to their appearance with such unbridled excitement. As the two ships hung in space, separated by mere kilometers, but representing entirely different evolutionary paths, a conversation began. It was halting at first, filled with misunderstandings and awkward pauses. But there was an undercurrent of genuine curiosity on both sides, a desire to bridge the gap that had for so long seemed uncrossable. Captain Chen, throwing caution to the wind, invited the Zirconian delegation aboard the Explorer. Her crew scrambled to adjust atmospheric conditions in the meeting room, rigging up force fields to contain the high-temperature, silicon-rich environment the Zirconians needed. When Crixtol stepped aboard the human ship, it was a moment that would be remembered in the annals of both species' histories. Here, at last, was a carbon-based race that didn't recoil in fear or disgust. The humans watched in awe as the crystalline being moved among them, asking questions, offering insights, and displaying a warmth that transcended their alien biology. For hours, the two crews exchanged information. The humans marveled at Zirconian technology, particularly their advanced propulsion systems and energy manipulation techniques. The Zirconians, in turn, were fascinated by human adaptability and their seemingly boundless creativity. As the meeting drew to a close, Captain Chen turned to Crixtol. "You know," she said, her voice filled with excitement, "I think this is the beginning of something amazing. Our peoples have so much to offer each other." Crixtol's crystalline form shimmered, a Zirconian expression of agreement and joy. "Perhaps," the alien captain replied, "we have finally found the allies we've been searching for." As news of the encounter spread, both human and Zirconian societies buzzed with excitement. For the humans, it was a vindication of their long-held beliefs about alien life and their place in the cosmos. For the Zirconians, it was a ray of hope after centuries of isolation. But not everyone viewed this budding alliance with optimism. Throughout the galaxy, other species watched warily. The humans were new, untested, their rapid technological advancement a source of concern. And now they were fraternizing with the Zirconians, a species that most of the galaxy had decided was best kept at arm's length. As Zal then received the report of the encounter, he felt a surge of emotion he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Perhaps, with the humans at their side, the Zirconians would finally find their place in the galactic community. But hope, as Zal then well knew, was a double-edged sword. As the Zirconians and humans drew closer together, the rest of the galaxy began to stir. The balance of power was shifting, and no one could predict where this new alliance would lead. In the darkness of space, as Zirconian and human ships began to meet with increasing frequency, the stage was set for a conflict that would reshape the galaxy. The Zirconians, long laughed at and dismissed, were about to show the universe what they were truly capable of, with humanity standing firmly by their side. The human factor. The news of the human-Zirconian alliance spread through the galaxy like wildfire, igniting a mix of curiosity, concern, and in some quarters, outright hostility. As diplomatic channels buzzed with activity, a small human delegation prepared to make history by visiting Zircon Prime. Dr. Ilara Vance, a renowned xenobiologist, stood before a mirror, adjusting the seal on her environmental suit. The fabric, a marvel of human ingenuity, was designed to withstand the extreme temperatures and corrosive atmosphere of the Zirconian homeworld. As she checked her equipment one last time, Ilara couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. She was about to set foot on a world that, until recently, had been considered impossible for carbon-based life to visit. "Ready, Doc." Captain Chen's voice crackled through the comm. "The Zirconians are waiting." Ilara took a deep breath. "Ready as I'll ever be, Captain. Let's make history." The shuttle descended through Zircon Prime's turbulent atmosphere, its heat shields glowing from the friction. As they broke through the cloud cover, Ilara gasped. The landscape below was like nothing she had ever seen. Vast plains of shimmering crystal, rivers of molten silicon carving glowing paths across the terrain, and in the distance, towering structures that seemed to grow organically from the planet itself. As the shuttle touched down on a crystalline landing pad, Ilara saw a group of Zirconians waiting to greet them. Their forms sparkled in the light of the red dwarf sun, each one unique in its crystalline patterns. Zal then stepped forward as the humans disembarked. "Welcome to Zircon Prime," he said, his words translated by the advanced systems both species now shared. "We are honored by your presence." Captain Chen, leading the human delegation, smiled broadly. "The honor is ours, Zal then. We're excited to learn more about your world and your people." What followed was a whirlwind tour of Zirconian society. The humans were shown great libraries of knowledge stored in complex crystal matrices, manufacturing centers where Zirconians shaped raw materials with nothing but thought and energy manipulation, and vast gardens of silicon-based life forms that defied traditional definitions of flora and fauna. Ilara found herself working closely with a Zirconian scientist named Rixvex. Together, they began to bridge the gap between their two biologies, each gaining insights that would have been impossible without the other's perspective. "It's fascinating," Ilara mused one day as they worked in a lab specially designed to accommodate both species. "Your silicon-based DNA analog. It's so different from ours, yet the underlying principles of information storage and replication are remarkably similar." Rixvex's crystalline form shimmered in agreement. "Indeed, it seems that life, regardless of its chemical basis, follows certain universal patterns. Your human perspective has helped us see our own biology in a new light." As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the collaboration between humans and Zirconians began to bear fruit. Technological advancements came at a rapid pace. The Zirconians' mastery of energy manipulation, combined with human creativity and adaptability, led to breakthroughs in fields ranging from medicine to space travel. One of the most significant developments was in the field of environmental adaptation. Human scientists, inspired by Zirconian biology, developed new materials that could withstand extreme temperatures and pressures. Zirconian engineers, in turn, created energy fields that could maintain Earth-like conditions in harsh environments. These advancements didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the galaxy. Trade representatives from various species began to cautiously approach the human-Zirconian alliance, interested in the new technologies being developed. For the first time in their history, the Zirconians found themselves becoming an integral part of galactic commerce. However, not all reactions were positive. Some species viewed the rapid advancement of the human-Zirconian alliance with suspicion and fear. The Thoraxians, in particular, were vocal in their concerns. At a tense galactic council meeting, the Thoraxian ambassador, Kesktrol, voiced his species' worries. "This unchecked collaboration poses a threat to the balance of power in our galaxy," he chiddered. "The humans, barely out of their planetary cradle, are now armed with technologies they can scarcely understand. And the Zirconians, can we trust that their centuries of isolation haven't bred resentment?" The human ambassador, Diego Reyes, stood to address the council. "With all due respect, Ambassador Kesktrol, the purpose of our alliance is not to upset the galactic balance, but to enrich it. The Zirconians have been part of this community for centuries, yet they've been kept at arm's length. We humans may be new to the galactic stage, but we recognize the value of diversity and collaboration." Zalven, now a respected figure in galactic politics, added his voice to the debate. "For too long, we Zirconians were seen as anomalies, curiosities to be studied, but never truly accepted. The humans have shown us that differences need not be barriers. We extend an invitation to all species to join us in this spirit of cooperation." As the debate raged on, news came from the fringes of explored space that would change everything. A human-Zirconian joint expedition had made a monumental discovery, a massive artifact of clearly artificial origin, built by an unknown species that had long since vanished. Initial scans suggested that the artifact was millions of years old and contained technology far beyond anything currently known to the galactic community. The discovery sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Suddenly, the Human-Zirconian Alliance found itself at the center of the greatest scientific endeavor in galactic history. Species that had been wary of the Alliance now clamored to be part of the research team. As preparations were made for a large-scale expedition to study the artifact, Ilara and Rixvex found themselves working harder than ever. Their unique combination of skills and perspectives had put them at the forefront of the research effort. "It's ironic, isn't it?" Ilara said one day as they pored over the initial data from the artifact. "A few years ago, most of the galaxy wanted nothing to do with the Zirconians. Now, everyone's falling over themselves to work with us." Rixvex's crystalline form rippled in amusement. "Perhaps this is the true power of our alliance, not just what we can achieve together, but how we can inspire others to look beyond their preconceptions." As excitement about the artifact discovery grew, so did tensions. Some species, led by the Thoraxians, argued that such powerful technology should be carefully controlled, with access limited to a select few. The Human-Zirconian Alliance, on the other hand, pushed for open collaboration and shared discovery. The stage was set for a conflict that would test the strength of the new alliance and potentially reshape the power dynamics of the entire galaxy. As ships from various species converged on the location of the artifact, no one could predict what would happen next. In her quarters aboard the Human-Zirconian research vessel, Horizon, Ilara looked out at the stars streaking by. She thought about how far they had come. Humans and Zirconians, two species that by all logic should never have been able to work together, now standing on the brink of a discovery that could change everything. Whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The laughter and mockery that had once been directed at the Zirconians had faded away, replaced by a growing respect, and in some cases, fear of what this unlikely alliance might achieve. As the Horizon approached its destination, Ilara felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet, and the eyes of the entire galaxy were upon them. But with humans and Zirconians standing side by side, she believed they were ready for whatever the universe might throw their way. The ultimatum. The massive artifact loomed before the assembled fleet, a silent sentinel in the void of space. Its surface was a maze of intricate patterns and structures, defying easy categorization or understanding. Ships from a dozen different species hung in space around it, their sensors probing and analyzing, trying to unlock the secrets of this ancient construct. Aboard the Horizon, the flagship of the Human-Zirconian expedition, tension was palpable. Dr. Ilara Vance and Rixvex stood side by side on the bridge, their eyes fixed on the main view screen. "It's beautiful," Ilara breathed, her voice filled with awe. Rixvex's crystalline form shimmered in agreement. "And terrifying," the Zirconian added. "The power contained within that structure, it could reshape the galaxy." Captain Chen approached them, her face grim. "We've got company," she said, nodding towards a sector of space where a new group of ships was decelerating from FTL. Thoraxian battle cruisers. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. The Thoraxians had been the most vocal opponents of the Human-Zirconian Alliance, and their presence here, with warships no less, could only mean trouble. As if on cue, a communication request came through. The main screen flickered, and the insectoid face of Kesktrol, the Thoraxian ambassador, appeared. "This is Ambassador Kesktrol of the Thoraxian Imperium." The alien's mandibles clicked as it spoke. "By decree of the Galactic Council, this site is now under quarantine. All non-authorized vessels are to withdraw immediately." Captain Chen stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "Ambassador, We were given no notice of such a decree. Our mission here is sanctioned by. Your mission, Kesk interrupted, is no longer recognized. The Council has deemed the Human-Zirconian Alliance a threat to galactic stability. You will withdraw or face the consequences. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. They can't do this, Ilara said, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. We've done nothing wrong. We're here to learn, to understand. To them, that's exactly the problem. Rixvex interjected. Our alliance has progressed too quickly, achieved too much. They fear what we might become with the knowledge contained in that artifact. Captain Chen's voice was steel as she addressed her crew. Send out a message to all human and Zirconian ships. We're not backing down. Prepare for possible hostile action. As the crew rushed to battle stations, Ilara felt a surreal sense of disconnection. How had it come to this? Just a few years ago, humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, and Zirconians were outcasts. Now, they stood together, facing down one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Diplomatic channels buzzed with arguments and counter-arguments. Other species in the assembled fleet chose sides, some backing the Human-Zirconian Alliance, others siding with the Thoraxians, and many simply withdrawing to a safe distance to watch events unfold. In the midst of the chaos, a breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. A junior Zirconian scientist, working with data from the artifact, deciphered a small portion of its operational systems. It wasn't much, just enough to power up a small section of the massive structure. But it was a start. The news spread quickly, and with it, a renewed sense of urgency. If the human Zirconian team could unlock the artifact's secrets, it could shift the balance of power dramatically. Keskral's reaction was swift and severe. The Thoraxian ships moved into an attack formation, weapons charged. This is your final warning. The ambassador's voice crackled over the comms. Withdraw now, or we will open fire. Captain Chen looked to Ilara and Rixvex. We need more time, Ilara said, her voice tight with tension. If we can just understand a bit more of the artifact systems. Time is a luxury we no longer have. Doctor, Chen replied grimly. She turned to her tactical officer. Shields up. Prepare for. Before she could finish, a brilliant light erupted from the artifact. A beam of energy, more powerful than anything they had ever seen, lanced out into space. For a moment, everyone held their breath, certain that this was some kind of attack. But the beam didn't strike any ships. Instead, it seemed to tear a hole in the very fabric of space-time. As they watched in awe, a swirling vortex formed, a wormhole of impossible size and stability. By all that's holy, Rixvex whispered, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement. Do you realize what this means? Ilara nodded, her mind racing with the implications. Instant travel across vast distances, the ability to explore parts of the universe we never thought we'd reach. The comms crackled to life again, but this time it wasn't Kestral. It was a voice none of them recognized, speaking in a language that shouldn't have been understandable, yet somehow was. Children of the stars, the voice said, echoing in their minds as much as in their ears. You have taken the first step, but are you ready for what comes next? A stunned silence fell over the fleet. The standoff between the Human-Zirconian Alliance and the Thoraxians was momentarily forgotten as everyone grappled with this new development. Captain Chen was the first to recover. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth-Zircon Alliance. Who? What are you? There was a pause, as if the entity on the other end was considering its words carefully. We are the precursors, the voice finally replied. We built the artifacts you now study, eons ago. We have watched and waited, hoping that a species, or an alliance of species, would arise, capable of understanding our legacy. Ilara's mind reeled. The precursors were supposed to be a myth, a story told to explain the unexplainable. Yet here they were, speaking to them across unfathomable gulfs of time and space. "Why now?" Rix-Vex asked, their normally melodious tones trembling slightly. "Why reveal yourselves to us?" "Because you stand at a crossroads," the precursor voice replied. "Your alliance, born of understanding between the utterly alien, represents a new hope for this galaxy. But you also stand on the brink of conflict, of repeating the mistakes that led to our own downfall." The implications of those words hung heavy in the air. The precursors, for all their advanced technology, had fallen. What chance did the younger races have if they couldn't overcome their differences? "We offer you a choice," the voice continued. "Step through the portal we have opened. Learn from our successes and our failures. But know this, the journey will change you in ways you cannot imagine. And you must all go together, or not at all." Captain Chen looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of her human crew, the crystalline gaze of Rix-Vex, and even the compound eyes of the Thoraxian ships visible on the view screen. In that moment, she knew that whatever decision they made would alter the course of galactic history forever. "We need time to discuss this," Chen said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Time," the precursor voice said, a note of amusement in its tone, "is one thing we can offer in abundance. But do not tarry too long. The stars await." As the voice faded, the assembled fleet found itself facing a choice far greater than the petty squabbles that had brought them to the brink of conflict. The human-Zirconian alliance, the Thoraxians, and all the other species present would have to decide. Did they have the courage to set aside their differences and take a leap into the unknown? Ilara and Rix-Vex exchanged glances. They had started this journey as representatives of two species that the galaxy had thought incompatible. Now, they stood at the threshold of an adventure beyond imagination. "Whatever happens," Ilara said softly, "we face it together." Rix-Vex's crystalline form glowed warmly in response. "Together," the Zirconian agreed. As debates raged across the fleet, one thing became clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. The era of isolation and mistrust was coming to an end. Whether through conflict or cooperation, a new age was dawning, and at its heart stood the unlikely alliance of humans and Zirconians, ready to lead the way into an uncertain but thrilling future. The journey begins. The swirling vortex of the wormhole dominated the view screens of every ship in the fleet. Its hypnotic patterns seemed to beckon them forward, promising adventure and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But with that promise came an undercurrent of danger, the unknown lurking just beyond the event horizon. In the hours following the precursor's message, the assembled fleet had been a hive of activity. Diplomatic channels buzzed constantly as species that had been on the brink of conflict now found themselves forced to consider an unprecedented level of cooperation. Aboard the Horizon, Captain Sarah Chen sat at the head of a hastily assembled council. Around her were representatives from every major species in the fleet: humans, Zirconians, Thoraxians, and half a dozen others. The atmosphere was tense, filled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "We need to make a decision," Chen said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "The precursors have offered us an opportunity that we may never have again, but the risks are enormous." Kisktral, the Thoraxian ambassador, clicked his mandibles in agitation. "How can we trust these precursors? For all we know, this could be an elaborate trap." Dr. Ilara Vance leaned forward, her eyes bright with the fire of scientific curiosity. "Ambassador, the technology we've seen, the wormhole alone, is beyond anything our civilizations are capable of. If the precursors wanted to destroy us, they could have done so without this elaborate setup." Rix-Vex, the Zirconian scientist, chimed in, their crystalline form shimmering with excitement. "Moreover, think of what we could learn." The precursors spoke of their own downfall. Understanding what happened to them could be crucial for our own survival. The debate raged on, with valid points raised on all sides. The potential gains were immeasurable, but so were the risks. As the arguments went back and forth, it became clear that no consensus would be reached easily. It was a young Aldebaran ensign, quiet until now, who finally spoke up. "Isn't this exactly what the precursors were talking about?" All eyes turned to her, and she continued, her voice gaining strength. "They said we stand at a crossroads, that we need to overcome our differences. Maybe that's the real test. Not whether we go through the wormhole, but whether we can make the decision together." A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Captain Chen nodded slowly, a small smile playing on her lips. "Well said, Ensign. So let's approach this differently. Instead of arguing about whether to go, let's discuss how we would do it if we decided to take this journey." The change in perspective was subtle, but its effect was profound. Gradually, the tone of the conversation shifted. Species that had been at odds began to find common ground as they discussed the practical aspects of the potential journey. The Thoraxians, with their expertise in long-range sensors, offered to take point in scanning the other side of the wormhole. The Zirconians proposed using their advanced energy manipulation techniques to create a stable field around the ships, protecting them from the unknown effects of wormhole travel. Humans, with their adaptability and out-of-the-box thinking, began devising contingency plans for various scenarios they might encounter. As the hours ticked by, what had started as a fractious debate evolved into a collaborative planning session. Species that had never worked together before found themselves building on each other's ideas, creating synergies that none of them had imagined possible. Ilara and Rixvex worked tirelessly, their unique partnership serving as a model for the broader cooperation. They developed a series of protocols for studying whatever they might encounter on the other side, combining Zirconian precision with human intuition. Finally, as the assembled representatives looked at the plans they had created together, a sense of shared purpose filled the room. Captain Chen stood, her eyes sweeping across the gathered aliens. "We came here as separate species, each with our own agendas," she said, "but look at what we've accomplished in just a few hours of genuine cooperation. Imagine what we could achieve on the other side of that wormhole." Kesk, who had been one of the staunchest opponents of the journey, surprised everyone by speaking next. "I entered this room certain that this venture was folly," the Thoraxian admitted, "but I find myself reevaluating. Perhaps there is wisdom in facing the unknown together, rather than clinging to our familiar rivalries." One by one, the representatives voiced their agreement. It wasn't unanimous, and there were still doubts and fears. But a consensus had been reached. They would make the journey together. As the news spread throughout the fleet, a mixture of emotions rippled through the crews of every ship. There was fear, certainly, but also a growing sense of excitement and purpose. They were about to embark on the greatest journey of exploration in the history of their civilizations. Preparations began in earnest. Ships were modified, crews were briefed, and final messages were sent back to homeworlds. The wormhole remained stable, a silent invitation to a universe of possibilities. On the day of departure, the fleet assembled in formation before the swirling vortex. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the horizon, Ilara and Rixvex at her side. She took a deep breath, then opened a channel to the entire fleet. "To all ships, this is Captain Chen. We stand on the brink of a new era. Whatever lies on the other side of this wormhole, we face it not as separate species, but as a united force. Our differences are our strength. Our diversity is our greatest asset. Together, we will unlock the secrets of the precursors and forge a new future for all our peoples." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew, human, Zirconian, and a mix of other species who had volunteered for this mission. Each one ready, despite their fears, to take this monumental leap. "All ships, prepare for wormhole transit. May fortune favor the bold." With that, the horizon surged forward, the first to enter the swirling vortex. One by one, the other ships followed, each disappearing into the brilliant light of the wormhole. As the horizon entered the wormhole, reality seemed to twist and bend around them. Ilara gripped her console tightly, her scientific mind racing to comprehend the sensor readings flooding her screens. Beside her, Rix Vex's crystalline form pulsed with energy, the Zirconians' unique biology allowing them to perceive aspects of the wormhole that were invisible to the others. For what seemed like an eternity, they traveled through a realm beyond normal space and time. Colors that had no name flashed before their eyes. Physical laws that formed the bedrock of their scientific understanding bent and warped in impossible ways. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The horizon burst out of the wormhole into normal space, quickly followed by the rest of the fleet. As the disorientation of the journey faded, they found themselves in a star system unlike any they had ever seen. A massive ring world encircled a blue giant star, its inner surface covered with continents and oceans on a scale that defied comprehension. Space stations of impossible size and complexity orbited at regular intervals, and in the distance they could see other wormholes, gateways to who knew how many other parts of the universe. As the fleet hung in space, awestruck by the sight before them, a transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice was the same one they had heard before, the precursor who had extended the invitation. "Welcome, children of the galaxy, to the hub. Your journey has just begun." Ilara, Rix Vex, and Captain Chen exchanged glances, each seeing in the other's eyes the same mix of wonder and trepidation. They had taken the first step into a larger universe, one filled with marvels and dangers beyond imagination. As the fleet began to move cautiously towards the ring world, one thing was clear: the alliance forged between humans, Zirconians, and the other species would be tested in ways they could never have anticipated. But together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and to unlock the secrets of the precursors. The laughter and mockery that had once been directed at the Zirconians were now a distant memory. In its place was a newfound respect, not just for the silicon-based beings, but for the power of cooperation and the strength found in diversity. As they approached the hub, the unlikely allies prepared to write a new chapter in the history of the galaxy, together. A new dawn. The hub was a marvel beyond anything the Allied fleet could have imagined. As they approached the massive ring world, the true scale of the precursors' achievements became apparent. The inner surface of the ring was a patchwork of diverse ecosystems, each one a world unto itself. Massive structures that defied the laws of physics as they knew them dotted the landscape, their purposes as mysterious as they were awe-inspiring. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the horizon, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the sight before her. "Begin scanning procedures," she ordered, her voice steady despite the excitement coursing through her. "Let's see what we can learn about this place." Dr. Ilara Vance and Rix Vex worked in perfect sync, their human and Zirconian perspectives combining to interpret the flood of data coming in from the sensors. What they found left them breathless. "Captain," Ilara reported, her voice filled with awe, "the energy readings from this structure. It's like nothing we've ever seen. The entire ring world seems to be powered by the star itself. They're harnessing the energy of an entire blue giant." Rix Vex's crystalline form shimmered with excitement. "And the materials. Some of them don't match any known element in our periodic table. The precursors were manipulating matter on a fundamental level we can barely comprehend." As the fleet moved closer to the hub, they received another transmission from the precursor entity. "You have questions," the voice said, a note of amusement in its tone. "Come, it is time for you to learn." A beam of light shot out from one of the massive structures on the ring's surface, enveloping the horizon in a soft, golden glow. Before anyone could react, the ship was gently pulled towards the surface, the rest of the fleet following in its wake. They found themselves docking in a vast hangar, large enough to comfortably house their entire fleet with room to spare. As the airlock cycled and the atmosphere was confirmed safe for all species present, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Captain Chen led a diverse group of representatives from the fleet onto the surface of the hub. Humans, Zirconians, Thoraxians, and others stepped out together, united in their awe of their surroundings. Before them stood a being of pure energy, its form shifting and changing in mesmerizing patterns. "I am the curator," it said, its voice resonating in their minds. "The last active consciousness of the precursor civilization. Welcome to the hub, the nexus of our galactic network." Over the next few days, the curator guided the allied species through the wonders of the hub. They learned of the precursors' history, how they had once been a collection of distinct species, much like the current galactic community. They had fought wars, formed alliances, made scientific breakthroughs, and faced existential challenges. "Our greatest achievement," the curator explained, "was not technological, but societal. We learned to truly cooperate, to see our differences not as divisions, but as strengths." The curator showed them marvels beyond imagination. Machines that could rearrange matter at the atomic level, archives containing the accumulated knowledge of millions of years, and gates that led to the far corners of the universe. But with each wonder came a warning. The precursors had not fallen to an external threat, but to their own hubris. In pushing the boundaries of science and exploration, they had awakened something they couldn't control, a force from beyond the boundaries of their known universe. "We sealed it away," the curator said, its form flickering with what could only be described as sadness. "But the cost was the end of our civilization as we knew it. We retreated into dormancy, watching and waiting for a new generation of species to arise, hoping they would learn from our mistakes and carry on our legacy." The implications of this revelation were staggering. The Allied fleet found themselves not just on a journey of discovery, but shouldering the responsibility of continuing the work of one of the most advanced civilizations the universe had ever known. As the days turned into weeks, the various species of the fleet worked together to understand and adapt the precursor technology. The learning curve was steep, but their diverse perspectives proved invaluable. Human intuition, Zirconian precision, Thoraxian analytical skills. Each species brought something unique to the table. Ilara and Rixvex found themselves at the forefront of these efforts, their partnership a symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation. They made breakthrough after breakthrough, unlocking secrets that would revolutionize their home civilizations. But as they delved deeper into the precursors' knowledge, they also began to understand the true nature of the threat that had ended their civilization. It wasn't gone, merely contained, and the seals were weakening. Captain Chen called a meeting of the fleet's leaders to discuss this looming danger. The chamber was filled with tension as she laid out what they had learned. "We have a choice to make," Chen said, her voice grave. "We can take what we've learned and return home, using this knowledge to advance our own civilizations, or we can stay and take up the precursor's mantle, become the guardians of this galaxy and beyond." The debate that followed was intense. Some argued for caution, for returning home with their newfound knowledge and technology. Others felt a sense of duty to continue the precursor's work. It was Kestrel, the once skeptical Thoraxian ambassador, who surprised everyone with his stance. "When we began this journey, I was certain it was a mistake," he said, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "I feared what we might find, how it might upset the balance of power. But now I see that the true power lies not in hoarding knowledge, but in sharing it, in working together to face challenges greater than any one species could handle alone." One by one, the other leaders voiced their agreement. The decision was made. They would stay, learn, and prepare. They would become the new guardians of the galaxy. The curator, observing their decision, seemed to glow with approval. "You have chosen a difficult path," it said, "but it is the right one. The challenges ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine. But together, you have the potential to surpass even what we precursors achieved." As the news spread throughout the fleet, a new sense of purpose filled every ship. They were no longer just explorers or diplomats. They were the inheritors of a cosmic legacy and the first line of defense against a threat beyond imagination. Ilara and Rixvex stood together, looking out over the vast expanse of the hub. "It's funny," Ilara said, a smile playing on her lips. "Not too long ago, your people were outcasts, and mine were newcomers to the galactic stage. Now look at us." Rix Vex's crystalline form glowed warmly. "Indeed, we've come a long way from being laughed at and mocked. But I think the journey ahead will make our past adventures seem like mere preludes." Captain Chen joined them, her face set in determined lines. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," she said. "Training, learning, preparing. And we need to find a way to communicate with our home worlds, to share what we've learned and rally more support." As they stood there, representatives of species that had once been divided by fear and mistrust, now united in a common cause, they felt a sense of hope and possibility. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they would face them together. The laughter and mockery that had once been directed at the Zirconians was now a distant memory. In its place was a new reality, one where the strengths of each species complemented the others, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared. As the first teams began their training with precursor technology, as diplomatic channels were established to reach out to homeworlds, as plans were made to explore the vast network of wormholes, a new era was dawning. An era of cooperation, of shared purpose, of facing the unknown united. The Human-Zirconian alliance, once seen as an oddity, had become the cornerstone of a galactic coalition. Together, they stood ready to write the next chapter in the history of the universe, a chapter filled with challenges, discoveries, and the limitless potential of unified diversity. As the hub hummed with activity, as ships from a dozen species worked in harmony, as the first steps were taken on a journey that would span millennia, one thing was clear: the future, with all its wonders and dangers, belonged to those who dared to reach across the gulf of difference and find common ground. The galaxy would never be the same again, and that perhaps was the greatest adventure of all.